it was so dark and there was just nobody on the roads at that time. And everything looks more bleak at night anyway. And there was actually no way out. This was it. This was it. Back then, when you surrendered a baby, it was a pretty secretive thing. They didn't want you to have any involvement with that child at all. And when the baby was born, I could hear that the baby was born. I could hear him crying, and I asked them what it was, and nobody answered me. And I asked again, is it a boy or a girl? And they didn't answer. They were trying to keep that information away from me. And then finally one nurse just quietly said, it's a boy. And then that night, it was change of shift at the hospital, and the nurse walked in with my baby. She didn't receive the report at shift change that he was a baby to be surrendered. That information missed her, so she brought him in. And then she was showing me how he had 10 fingers and 10 toes, and he had blonde hair, and he was all healthy. And during that time, I took care of him, and I fed him and changed him and whatnot, and then left the hospital before he did. When I went back the following evening to see him, he was gone. The Children's Aid had picked him up that day and taken him to foster care. So that was it. That was it for 29 years.
I knew from as long as I remember that I was adopted. I have an adopted sister, and we were always told what that was and what it meant, and I always had a really good feeling about my adoption. It was a very positive thing for me to be adopted, and I was never taught that it was something to be embarrassed about. I often heard the term real parents, and especially from other kids. Who are your real parents? Who's your real mother? My real mother is my adoptive mother. My biological mother, who I had never met, didn't know anything about, was the person who carried me and gave birth to me. But from that point on, I had a mother. It was the one who adopted me. I was sitting at my desk one day at work, and the phone rang, and on the call display it said Ministry of Social Services. I knew exactly from that moment what that was. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. It came out of nowhere, and I was kind of afraid to pick up the phone. When the social worker asked me if I wanted to go further and let my mother know that I was here and that I was willing to get in contact with her, it really kind of sent a flutter through my stomach, because I knew that somewhere this woman was going to get a phone call just like the one I had. And she was going to get, one of the surprises of her life.
She said, I have something to tell you. Are you sitting down? I said, no, I'm not, but go ahead. She started to speak very, very slowly, and she said, I am calling you about a baby. And I said, yes. And she said, a baby boy born in 1972 at Henderson Hospital. So I just sort of folded myself over the countertop and just tried to support myself that way so I wouldn't fall to the floor. And I just kept repeating, oh my God, oh my God.
The first step with the reconnection was to get a letter. We were to write a letter to each other that would go through the social worker, because we still had no identifying contact information.
When I got the letter, I saw her return address on it, and I knew what it was. I took it home and I put it down, and I don't think I opened it for 20 minutes.
When I received the letter from my birth mother for the first time, I put it aside for a couple hours. I knew what it was, and my impulse was to rip it open and read it, on the spot.
We set up Hotmail accounts, so then we started emailing back and forth and letting out bits of information, very sometimes tentatively in the beginning, just letting out little bits of information, and I was just taking everything I could get.
Over that year period that we were communicating, we really got to know each other's personality, so we were able to see if a physical connection, meeting in person, and maybe being part of each other's families was going to be a healthy thing for either of us.
In a couple of emails, we both alluded to the fact that we're probably going to meet. What do you think? Should we meet?
I knew that it would be kind of fun to bring her to Toronto, to the big city, to meet me for the first time. So what I did was I got a room at the Sutton Place Hotel, which was a block away from my condo, and to put her there overnight, and then we would meet the next day.
So I drove to Toronto one morning with my heart in my throat, easily, and got to the hotel hours early, of course.
I walked a block to the hotel, got there in time, and I couldn't call her at her room. I didn't know what her room was.
Time kept going on and on. We were supposed to meet probably about 3 or 3:30, and this was getting later, and he wasn't calling me.
I thought I'm going to write a note and have one of the hotel staff stuff it under her door, because I thought maybe she bailed.
Finally, the concierge came upstairs and told me there was somebody waiting. It was a letter from Mark, handwritten, which again, I just closed the door quickly because I thought, oh no, he's telling me he can't go through with this. You know, I'm here, but he can't go through with this. Well, he was just telling me that my phone wasn't plugged in.
I got the okay. They sent me up to her room and opened the door, and there she was.
He says I made him cry. I think he made me cry, but the bottom line is we both cried when we first met. It was nice.
I didn't realize how much of my kind of core identity was tied to my adoption. It really showed me that so much of who I am and what I believe and how I operate in my life is because of, this part of my life. I know that my adopted son will someday possibly want to meet his mother, and I'm going to give him the tools to deal with the emotional aspect of that, because it's a big decision. It's not always positive. You might not hear or find out what you want to find out. I just have to be here for him and understand him and be here however things turn out.
When I was emailing Mark, and long before we met, he told me that his mother mailed me a letter. And I said, well, I didn't get it. And so he told his mother that I never received that letter. And she emailed me almost immediately. And she said, this is a letter from one mother to another, 30 years in the delivery. She said, my husband and I would like to thank you for giving us the most precious gift we could ever receive. It was a miraculous gift, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.